Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you. How are you today? I hope you are okay. Ramadan Mubarak inshallah. May Allah accept your prayers and your worship
We
inshallah.
are fine.
How is Ramadan with you?
It's very well.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Praise be to Allah. مصطلح الحمد لله. Praise be to Allah. Okay. Guys, we started talking something about Antony and Cleopatra. We reached to the plot, which is the incidents of the story. I will try to ask you to read quickly, or I can read quickly, and I want you to read quickly if I asked you. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the story is about Mark Antony, one of the three rulers of Roman Empire. He spends his time in Egypt, living life of a decadence and conducting an affair with the country's beautiful queen, which is Cleopatra. When a message arrives informing him that his wife Flavia is dead and that Pompey is raising an army to rebel against the triumvirate, Antony decides to return to Rome. In Antony's absence, Octavius Caesar and Lepidus, his fellow triumvirs, worry about Pompey's increasing strength. Could you please mute yourself, guys? Okay. So we should put in mind that we have the three rulers of the world: Octavius Caesar, Lepidus, and Mark Antony, which is the hero of our story. Now we have a worry about Pompey's increasing strength. Caesar condemns Antony for neglecting his duties as a statesman كرجل دولي and a military officer in order to live a decadent life. Decadent life, it means low life, love life, يعني حياة متواضعة متدنية, which is about love by Cleopatra's side. The news of his wife's death and imminent battle breaks Antony's sense of duty, and he feels compelled to return to Rome. Upon his arrival, he and Caesar quarrel, while Lepidus effectually tries to make peace, realizing that an alliance is necessary to defeat Pompey. Antony and Caesar agree that Antony will marry Caesar's sister, whose name is Octavia, who will solidify their loyalty to one another. Solidify, what do you mean? What is the meaning of solidarity?
جندي.
solidarity التضامن. solidify تضامن, تجعلهم يتضامنون. أيوة, their loyalty to one another. In Barbus, who is Antony's closest friend, predicts يعني تنبأ to Caesar's men لرجال القيصر, despite the marriage, Antony will surely return to Cleopatra. In Egypt, Cleopatra learns about Antony's marriage and flies into a jealous rage. However, when a messenger delivers a word that Octavia is plain and unimpressive, Cleopatra becomes confident that she will win Antony back. the triumvirs meet Pompey and settle their differences without going to a battle. Pompey agrees to keep peace in exchange for rule over Cilicia and Sardinia. That evening, the four men drink to celebrate their truce. One of Pompey's soldiers disclose هي soldiers هي جندي أو جنود discloses to him a plan to assassinate بمعنى يغتال. هاي الكلمة أصلها عربي اللي هي اجت من كلمة الحشاشين اللي هن موجودين اللي كانوا موجودين في سوريا في العصور الوسطى، وكانوا مشهورين بالاغتيالات، فأخذوا كلمة الحشاشين assassinate تمام to assassinate the triumvirs, thereby delivering the world power to Pompey's hand. But Pompey dismisses the scheme as an affront to his honor. It means it's not from his honor to kill his guests. Meanwhile, one of Antony's generals wins a victory over the kingdom of Parthia. Antony and Octavia depart for Athens. Once they are gone, Caesar breaks his truce and wages war against Pompey and defeats him. After using Lepidus' army to secure a victory, he accuses Lepidus of treason, imprisons him, and confiscates his land and possessions. This news angers Antony, as do the rumors that Caesar has been speaking out against him in public. What's the meaning of speaking out against him in public? يتكلم عليه ضمن العامة أو أمام العامة. Octavia pleads with Antony to maintain a peaceful relationship with her brother. Should Antony and Caesar fight, she says, her affections would be painfully divided. Why? Because her husband and his sister, her brother, Antony dispatches her to Rome, send her to Rome on a peace mission, and quickly returns to Egypt and Cleopatra. There he raises a large army to fight Caesar, and Caesar incensed over Antony's treatment of his sister, responds in kind. Caesar condemns his army and navy to Egypt, ignoring all advice to contrary. Antony elects to fight him at sea. So Antony ignored or neglected all the advices, okay, and he chooses to fight at sea, in the sea. It means on the ship, allowing Cleopatra to command a ship despite Enobarbus' strong objection. So Enobarbus objects that decision of Mark Antony to make Cleopatra command a ship, lead a ship. Antony's forces lose the battle when Cleopatra's ship flees, and Antony's follows, leaving the rest of the fleet vulnerable. So in the battle, when Cleopatra goes from the battle, Antony, who is the leader of the fleet, الأسطول, قائد الأسطول, follow her. So the fleet or the army will lose because his leader is not with them. Antony's despairs condemns Cleopatra for leading him into a infamy, but quickly forgiving her. He and Cleopatra send requests to their conqueror Al-Fatih. Antony asks to be allowed to live in Egypt, while Cleopatra asks that her kingdom be passed down to her rightful heirs. Caesar dismisses Antony's request, but he promises Cleopatra a fair hearing if she betrays her lover. It means he will listen to her, he will see her demands if she leaves Antony alone, betrays him. Cleopatra seems to be living thoughts to Caesar's message when Antony bursts in, curses her for the treachery, and others innocent messages or messenger wiped. When a moment later Antony forgives Cleopatra again. So every now and then we will see that Antony is somehow following his desire, following his feeling. Enobarbus decides that his master is finished and defects to Caesar's camp. defects بمعنى انشقة. تمام. Antony meets Caesar's troop in a battle and score an unexpected victory. When he learns of Enobarbus' decision, Antony laments his own bad fortune. Why? Because he is losing his friends, which he believes has corrupted an honorable man. Who is the honorable man? Enobarbus. It means his fortune يعني حظه بمعنى جعل أفضل أصدقائه سيئا. He sends his friends' possessions to Caesar's camp and returns to Cleopatra to celebrate his victory. Enobarbus, undone by shame at his own disloyalty, and bows under the weight of his guilt and dies. So he dies because of his feeling of guilty. Why? Because he betrays his master, who is Antony. Another day brings another battle, and once again Antony meets Caesar at sea. As before, the Egyptian fleet proves treacherous. It abandons the fight and leaves Antony to suffer defeat. So again, the Egyptian ships or fleets again surrender from the battle as a kind of treachery. Now convinced that his lover has betrayed him, Antony vows to kill Cleopatra. In order to protect herself, she quarters herself in a monument and sends words that she has committed suicide. So in order to neglect Antony's anger, she hides in a monument في صرح إهرام أو قصر صرح, and sends a word يعني أرسلت له رسالة إنه هي انتحرت. طبعا عم تنقذه هي مشان تستعطفوا حدا المال. Antony racked with grief, so he feels grief and determines to join his queen in afterlife afterlife الحياة الآخرة. He commands one of his attendants to fulfill his promise of unquestioned service and kill him. So Anthony, he feels grief, he feels sadness about Cleopatra's death, but she is lying, she is not dead. When he heard that Cleopatra killed herself, he asks one of his attendants, أحد حضوره, to give him a service and kill him. إنه يخدمه أو يعطيه خدمة بقتله، إنه يقتل Cleopatra. The attendant kill himself instead. So the attendant doesn't kill Antony, but he kills himself. Antony then falls on his sword. So he falls on his sword, يعني وقع على سيفه، هو قتل نفسه. But the wound is not immediately fatal. ما كانت قاتلة. He is carried to Cleopatra's monument, where the lovers reunited briefly before Antony's death. So when he stabs himself with his sword, عندما طعن نفسه بسيفه, he was carried to Cleopatra's monument. أخذ إلى صرح كليوباترا. ولكن كليوباترا ما كانت قاتلة نفسها. Caesar takes the queen prisoner. أخذ القيصر، أو سيزر، يعني القيصر هو اسمه طبعا، ولكن تعني معنى سيزر القيصر. أخذها كأسيرة. Planning to display her in Rome. ليش؟ مشان يعرضها وين؟ في روما. As a testament to might of his empire. But she learns of his plan. عرفت بخطته انه بده ياخذها أسيرة. And kills herself with the help of several poisonous snakes. إذا العرف عندهم انه يقتلوا نفسهم من خلال لدغة حية. طبعا هذا طقس، يعني قتل النفس بالنسبة للملوك هذا عندهم شيء فيه شرف. Caesar has her buried beside Antony. طبعا at the end Caesar respects their love and he buried them، يعني دفنهم beside each other. It means he buried Cleopatra besides Antony. Now we will go to the next, the summary of the plot. What is the major conflict of the plot? Who can read? I want somebody to read. What is the major conflict? ما هو الصراع الأساسي في المسرحية? Who can read?
I can read.
Yes, you can, Rafa.
Major conflict. Antony is torn between his duties
واجباته.
duties as Roman ruler and soldier, and his desire to live in Egypt with his lover. Cleopatra, this yes.
لحظة. ظهر. Just a moment.
Okay.
يلا. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Cleopatra, this inner conflict
Rafa'an,
leads
just to correct the pronunciation, Cleopatra.
Cleopatra.
مو كليو.
Cleopatra
divide it قسمية Cleo.
Cleopatra.
Excellent.
Cleopatra. This inner conflict leads him to become embroiled in
Embroiled.
a war with Caesar. One of his fellow
philo triumvirs يعني أحد زملائه يعني
triumvirs.
أيوة triumvirs هن ثلاثي الحكام يعني الحكم المقسم بين ثلاثة أشخاص. أوكي إذن هذا هو الميجر conflict. This is the major conflict. هذا الصراع الرئيسي إنه أنتوني ممزق بين حبه لكليوباترا وبين واجباته كضابط وكرجل دولي. تمام. طيب.
Yes.
What is the rising action?
Yes.
يلا هو
rising action.
You would like to continue يا رفعت?
Yes.
Does anybody wants to continue? Go on يا رفعت.
Yes.
Yes.
The rising action for Rif'a, then we will go to another person.
Yes. Rising action. Caesar lures Antony out of Egypt and back to Rome and marries Antony to his sister Octavia. Antony eventually returns to Egypt and Cleopatra and Caesar prepares to lead any army against Antony.
By the way, when we say rising action, it means the most important actions in a story which leads to the climax or which leads to the most important point in the story. خليني أذكركم شوي عن أقسام البلot. The plot has many parts. The first part, which is introduction. أول شيء introduction. مقدمة. Here, in the introduction, the author introduces us to the character and to the setting. Then we have the rising action. The rising action, it means all the incidents that drives the action to the most important point in a story, which is the climax. إذن حاليا حكينا عن قسمين. أول شيء بالبلot في عنا الانترودكشن، بعدين في عنا الرايزنج اكشن الأعمال الصاعدة. راح أشرح بالعربي. الأعمال الصاعدة هي كل الأحداث اللي بتأدي لأهم نقطة في الحدث، اللي هي نقطة تحول. قال نقطة تحول شو مسميها؟ كلايماكس. إذن هذا ثالث عنصر في البلot. إذن أول عنصر برجع بعيد الانترودكشن، ثاني عنصر اللي هو رايزنج اكشن، ثالث عنصر الكلايماكس. What is the climax? The climax is the most important point in a story. Okay? Or the turning point. نقطة تحول، لأنه هي بتكون أهم نقطة. We have falling action. قال الأفعال اللي بتجي بعد الكلايماكس كلها مسميها falling action. Which is the action or which are the actions that leads التي تقودنا to the resolution إلى النهاية. Finally, we have the resolution. The resolution is the conclusion or the end of the story. Okay? Or sometimes they call it resolution، يعني إنه الحل، بتنحل المشكلة. الكلايماكس بتنحل أو بصير القرار النهائي. تمام؟ Yes, رفعة. Go on.
Climax. Antony disgraces himself by fleeing the battle of
Actium.
Actium.
فر من معركة أكتيوم.
Yes. To follow Cleopatra betraying his own image of himself as a noble Roman.
إذن هو بنظره betraying his own image يعني خان صورته أمام الناس، تمام، كرجل نبيل من روما. يلا who is next? Who would like to read?
Yes.
Yes, go on.
Following action, Cleopatra abandons Antony during the second naval battle, leaving him to
Naval
suffer
battle, it
defeat.
means battle on ship، يعني المعركة ضمن أسطول.
Yes. Foreshadowing.
Leaving him to suffer.
Yes. Foreshadowing.
Yes, so leaving him to suffer defeat. Foreshadowing. Foreshadowing
Yes.
is one of the techniques of the plot. قال في عنا أساليب للبلot. أحدها هو الفورشادوينج، بمعنى الإذعان، التنبؤ، يعني بيحطك بصورة إيش راح يصير بالمستقبل. هي أحد التكنيكس for the plot. في عنا أحد التكنيكس of the plot اللي هي فلاش باك، العودة بالذاكرة للخلف. كتير بتشوفوا بالأفلام أو بالمسرحيات أو بالقصص إنه عم بستعيد أو بتذكر شبابه أو عم بتذكر حادثة مضت، هذا اسمه فلاش باك. التقنية الثالثة في عنا تقنية التشويق اللي suspension. إذا هي التقنية الثالثة للبلات. يلا go on.
Yes. Foreshadowing the place repeated mentions of snakes. For instance, Lycidas drinking, raving about the creatures of the Nile Nile foreshadows Cleopatra
foreshadows. هذا
choosing
ايش بديل، ايش بيعطينا تنبؤ. ايوه.
Cleopatra's chosen means of suicide.
إذن ارتكابها نعم. The themes. As we said,
Yes.
every story has ideas or has themes. What are the themes? I need somebody to read. Go on يا مضر.
The struggle between reasons and emotion,
Reason
the clash
and
of
emotion.
East and West.
إذن النضال أو الصراع
Yes.
بين العقل والعاطفة. reason العقل. أنتم بتعرفوها بمعنى سبب، ولكن بالأدب
Yes.
بمعنى العقل.
Yes.
نعم.
The clash of East and West.
The clash of East and West. الصراع بين الشرق والغرب.
The definition of honor.
The definition of honor. تعريف
Definition of
الشرف.
honor.
الأونر، كل شخص عنده الأونر هو شيء مختلف عن الطرف الآخر. I need somebody else to read quickly please، لأنه معنا أقل من 10 دقائق بدنا ننهي المحاضرة. فاطمة الحمود. Can you read يا فاطمة؟ لحظة يا فاطمة، عندك النت الظاهر كثير ضعيف.
shape.
اوكي لا هلا تمام، هلا صار تمام. Go on.
اي والله ضعيف استاذ. تمام. Symbols shape changing clouds. Anthony likens his shifting sense of self to a cloud.
Just a moment. Symbols هي الرموز المستخدمة في المسرحية. في عنا shape changing clouds، انه الغيوم المتغيرة الاشكال. شو بترمز؟ لأنتونيز likening his shift sense of self to a cloud، انه أنتوني ورأيه المتقلب هو مثل الغيمة المتقلبة. تاني رمز.
Cleopatra's fleeing
ships. إذن سفن كليوباترا الفارة التي هربت هي رمز لإيش؟
symbol of hair wavering and changeability.
إذن hair wavering تموجها يعني تغيرها تقلبها and changeability وتغيرها. The asps يعني الأفاعي.
The aspects maybe be an Orientalist view refers to the cunning nature of the
nature of
East
is طبعا هي نظرة
from
استعمارية
another
للشرق. just a moment. طبعا بالنسبة
political
للغرب, let me comment on this يا فاطمة. We have an Orientalist view, في نظرة من الغرب للشرق اللي هي نظرة دونية. بالنسبة لهم الغرب عم بنظروا على الشرق انه هن افاعي، يعني نوع من المكر cunning، المكر الخداع. the cunning nature of east، الطبيعة الماكرة للشرق. قال نحن انه بيحكوا عننا انه نحن ماكرين. يلا from another political point of view. يلا.
though the domestic nature of the image contributes to Cleopatra's final metamorphosis
yes.
in death into Antony's wife. She assures him, husband, I come.
Okay, so the asps in the Egyptian culture is something different to the European culture. Okay. Diction, let me read quickly in order to finish. We have a blank verse. blank verse الشعر نوع من أنواع الشعر, which is نقوله a free verse or blank verse الشعر الحر, which is unrhymed iambic pentameter. هو شعر غير مقفى يتبع تفعيلة الأيامبيك. النوع البحر هو بنتامتر. السطر الشعري مؤلف من خماسي التفعيلة بنتامتر for the main character. إذا بالنسبة للشخصيات الرئيسية طبعا one of the Shakespearean technique, he uses the main character, the noble characters, to say their words in a blank verse. قال هدول الأعمال أو الشخصيات الأساسية عنده بيحكوا شعر. قال إنه هدول كثير طبقة راقية. بينما low level people, they speak like everyday language. Now Shakespeare's words in Antony and Cleopatra. إذن راح نقارن بين كلمات أنتوني and Cleopatra أو عفوا كلمات شكسبير في الرواية. As you begin to read the opening scenes of a play by Shakespeare, you may notice occasional unfamiliar words. في عنا كلمات غريبة. Some unfamiliar simply because no longer use we no longer use them لأنه نحن ما بقى نستخدمهم. In the opening scene of Antony and Cleopatra, for example, you will find words like dismission, it means discharge. Homeager, it means tenants or a vessel to a feudal lord. Be like, it means perhaps. Methinks, it means it seems to me. This is one of the words. In Antony and Cleopatra, as in all Shakespeare's writing, more problematic are the words that we still use, but we use with different meaning. It means at that time we have the same words with today, but with different meaning. In the opening scene of Antony and Cleopatra, for example, the word property has a meaning of distinctive quality. Okay, it's not possession. Okay, it means distinctive quality. Full is used where we would say very. Full, it means very. Ambassador is used where we would say a messenger. Ambassador, a messenger. And still, where we would say always. Still, it means always. Now Shakespeare's sentences. Shakespeare frequently shifts يغير his sentences away from the normal English agreement or arrangement, the structure of the sentence is often to create the rhythm he seeks, sometimes to use lines, poetic rhyme to emphasize a particular word, and sometimes to give a character his or her own speech pattern, or to allow the character to speak in a special way. And we have Shakespeare often, for example, rearranges subjects and verbs. Instead of he goes, we find goes he. Look to the structure, like the Arabic structure. In Antony and Cleopatra, when Caesar says, to that end assembles we. Okay? It's a different structure for Shakespeare from nowadays language. Now, in studying the content of close analytical reading, all Orientalism, Antony and Cleopatra. إذا في عنا نظرة استشراقية أو نظرة غرب للشرق من قديمة. East versus West. الشرق ضد الغرب. Orientalism often leads to destroy the view of these cultures, and often depicting the people as overly exotic, mysterious, immoral, such as in the case of Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. In Antony and Cleopatra are made of series of contrasts. في عنا تناقضات. Here I will exploring the contrast in the East versus West. Egypt is presented as being liberal, فيها تحرر, and a place of pleasure, ومكان للهو. Tonight, استشهدنا بالقول, tonight we will wander طلابنا الأعزاء، انتهى وقت المحاضرة، ولكن راح أكمل على شكل تسجيل وراح نزله إن شاء الله على موقع الجامعة وعلى اليوتيوب. بتمنى تتابعوا. أنا ما راح أفتح الجلسة مرة تانية، بدي 4 دقائق، وأكيد هلق في عندكم موعد محاضرة تانية، فلذلك على الأغلب راح إن شاء الله. طيب لحظة نشوف أشوف البرنامج مرة تانية ونشوف نحسن نفتح جلسة ولا لا. Hi again. Now since there is no lecture after my lecture, I will take the time and continue the lecture today, or the information that I am going to teach to you. Now I need somebody to read, somebody other than Mudar and Fatima and Rifa, who would like to read. Does anybody want to read? Okay, let me read. Now we have Orientalism. What's the meaning of Orientalism? Orientalism in an English dictionary, it means a scholarly knowledge of an Asian cultures and language and people, or the quality or the customs, عادات, or the manners of Asian civilizations. It means in the European vision, Orientalism, it means their vision to the Asian world. Okay, so we have some kind of old Orientalism. Since Orientalism is a new term, هي مصطلح حديث، ولكن في عنا نظرة قديمة من الغرب باتجاه الشرق. Okay, for example, I will read again. All Orientalism in Antony and Cleopatra, it means East versus West. Orientalism often leads to a distorted view of these cultures, so they try to distort يشوهوا the view of these cultures. often by depicting the people as overly exotic. Exotic, it means being or from the characteristic of another place of or part of the world. It means strange people. Mysterious, immoral, not moral, okay? Without virtue. Look to the Orientalism or the Orientalist view. Such is the case with Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. In Antony and Cleopatra, Antony and Cleopatra are made up of series of contrasts. So we have many of contradictions. Here I will be exploring the contrast that is East versus West. Number 1, Egypt. Egypt is presented as being liberal, تحررية, and a place of pleasure, ومكان للمتعة. وفي عنا استشهاد بقول من المسرحية: Tonight we will wander, سوف نتمتع نتجول, through the streets, خلال الشوارع, and note the qualities of people, وننظر أو نلاحظ صفات الناس. هي نظرة من الأورينتاليزم، نظرة استشراق دنيوية. While in Egypt, Antony and Enobarbus have feasted وكانوا يعني بياكلوا drunken بيشربوا and enjoy the pleasure of the flesh. Enobarbus even seems to hesitate to leave. كان متردد انه يغادر. And tries to convince Antony to stay in act number 1 and scene number 2. إذن طلب منه انه يجلس هذا الحكي act number 1 بالفصل الأول, scene number 2 بالمشهد الثاني. الكوتيشن بيقول: If they suffer of our departure, death is the word. إذا أقول طبعا عم بيحكوا عن كليوباترا والوصيفات، وعبصوروا انه العائل الروماني انه هو المجتمع الذكوري القوي الحاكم، بينما حكام مصر بذلك الوقت هن الانفيرير، الناس الادنى، وان هن ناس لاجل متعة، وصورن ملوك ان هن نساء. فقالوا انه if they suffer of our departure، اذا كانوا يعانون او سيعانين من مغادرتنا، death is the word، فالموت هي النتيجة. إذن فصور أو صورت مصر مكان للمتعة. So Egypt was depicted as a place for pleasure. Rome on the other hand، شوفوا صوروا روما في ذلك الوقت أو على النقيض، is a place of strict duty. What's the meaning of strict duty؟ لمكان للواجب الصارم، يعني الصرامة بالواجب، يعني عندهم مكان الالتزام بالعمل. politics والسياسة and morals والأخلاق، إنهم ملتزمين بأخلاقهم. Caesar thinks Antony is being very un-Roman، إنه صار كإنسان غير روماني. as he بينما هو fishes يصطاد السمك، drinks يشرب الخمر، and waits the lamps of night in revel. and the lamps إذن and wastes the lamps بمعنى يرعى، أو بمعنى نحن نقول بالعامية يزيل الأذى the lamps on the night in revel. the lamps بمعنى طبعا في عنا كذا معنى. waste the lamps يضيع الوقت في الليالي. in revel في أو في المرح، وذلك in act number 1 في الفصل الأول المشهد الخامس. Caesar calls Antony a man who is abstract of all faults. شو دعا قيصر أو شو نادى لأنتوني أو شو وصفه؟ إنه a man who is the abstract of all faults، إنه هو مبدأ أو القيم المجردة لكل الأخطاء. Meaning that Caesar thinks of Antony is embodying everything that is evil while stationed in Egypt. قال إنه صار هو مركز أو صار كله غلط وقت إيمت وقت حط رحاله stationed in Egypt. The Romans die on sword. وشكسبير بالنظرة الاستشراقية كمان كيف صور الروماني بيموت على سيفه انه هو بطل، while Egyptians dies with poisonous snakes، بينما مصريين بيموتوا بسم الأفاعي. بالنسبة له لشكسبير عم بيصور المصريين كناس مخادعين. شوفوا النظرة الاستشراقية. عنا الفكرة الثانية. إذا انتهينا من الفكرة الأولى اللي هي الأورينتاليزم من خلال القصة. We have another idea which is feminism، النسوية أو النظرة للنساء في ذلك الوقت في عهد شكسبير. Egypt is also associated with femininity. إذا قورنت مصر بالنساء as an inferior vision، كنظرة دونية. أيضا Egypt is a place where characters can freely express their emotion. وصورت مصر على أنها مكان يمكن أن تعبر عن عواطفك بحرية، يعني مكان هو بنظره أنه مكان للعاطفة فقط. طبعا العاطفة دائما تقترن بالنساء، فهي نظرة نسوية. Antony in particular can express himself in Egypt, whereas in Rome he is bound to comply his duties over emotion. وأنتوني وقت بيكون بروما قال مضطر أنه يلتزم بواجباته، ما بس أن يعبر عن نفسه مثل ما وضعه في مصر. Rome has been characterized as a male world. إذن شو صوروا روما كعالم ذكوري حاكم and presided over by the austere Caesar, and Egypt as a female domain كمجال نسوي embodied by Cleopatra، تم تجسيده بالملكة كليوباترا who is seen to be as abundant, leaky and changeable as the Nile. إذن بدت كأنها غير يعني مهجورة، leaky بمعنى إنسان يفر، okay، and changeable ومتغيرة، مثلها مثل نهر النيل like the Nile. By the way, these ideas from this source by Jonathan J. Harris, this is what we call referencing. طبعا هذه طريقة أخذ المراجع. We have another idea which is the Romans believe that Egypt and his lover, for example, are distracting Antony from his important duties. طبعا في عندي خطأ بالstructure. The Romans believes that Egypt, which is embodied by Cleopatra, distracting تشوش أو تضيع Antony from his important duties. تشوش أنتوني عن واجباته الأساسية. الفكرة الثالثة اللي راح نشوفها بالمسرحية we have another idea which is old colonization or old colonialism الاستعمار القديم. إذا الاستعمار ما هو حديث، حتى على العصر بعهد الروماني we see that the Roman colonized our countries. Most of the Arabic world was under the rule of the Romans, so it was colonized at that time. Even the Pharaoh culture or the Pharaoh reign, الحكم الفرعوني, was under the Roman at the time. The Arabic countries, Syria and the peoples here, والشعوب هنا, were under the rule of Roman. Even at the time, the world was divided between Parthia, الفرس, and the Romans, والرومان. Now, Romans think they are moral, mature. إيش ظنهم بنفسهم؟ إنهن أخلاقيين, mature, ناضجين, structured and masculine. إذن عندهم منظمين and masculine, ذكوريين. They see the world as something to be conquered and to be controlled. So they see the world as a place to be invaded, to be occupied. They want to influence and control the world, not the other way around. The Romans, another idea, the Romans see Egyptians as immoral, without moral, as immoral as they act on their emotions. Therefore, the Romans see Egypt as being a chaotic, فوضوية, disordered, مضطربة, indulgent and over-sexualized. Look to the colonial vision. They see the Arabic world as, or the Middle East people, حتى لازم ما نستخدم مصطلح الميدل إيست لأن هذا مصطلح سياسي جديد. The East, the people in the East as emotional people, people who were or who are controlling by their emotions, and they depict the Egyptians as over-sexualized people who are interested with sex. We have another theme, another idea in the play, which is politics. How is politics depicted in Shakespeare's play? We will see. As various political players struggle. Players, it means active person, active people. As various political players struggle for control over the crumbling Roman Republic. Most of the play's characters attempt to strategize and manipulate their way to safety and power. So in other words, I want to explain, all the rulers or the political players are seeking powers. كلهم عم يطلعوا على السلطة. And alliances shift. التحالفات متغيرة throughout the play. As Antony and Octavius begin in the same side, إذا كانوا بالأول في نفس الطرف, against Pompey, ضد Pompey, before Octavius turns on Lepidus, قبل أن ينقلب على Lepidus اللي هو أحد الثلاثي الحاكم معه, and Antony on Octavius, ثم انقلب أنتوني على Octavius. إذن أو Antony and Octavius turn on each other, انقلب على بعضهم. lesser commanders must figure out their own strategies as well. حتى بالنسبة للinferior commanders، القادة اللي أدنى من القادة الكبار، حاولوا يوجدوا استراتيجياتهم الخاصة. مثلا إنوباربوس ترك أو نعم left Antony to the side of Octavius Caesar because he is seeking his interest، يبحث عن مصلحته. إذا إيش معنى interest؟ interest بلغة الأدب بمعنى مصلحته، وبعلم الاقتصاد interest هي الفائدة. تمام. Cleopatra's fleeing ships. إذا أسطول كليوباترا الفار is presented twice in the play. How many times? Twice. Antony twice does battle with Caesar at sea. إذا كم مرة سوى معركة في البحر؟ Twice. It means 2 times. And both times his navy is betrayed by the queen's retreat. إذا بالمرتين تم خذلانه من قبل أسطول الملكة أو بانسحاب أسطول الملكة. The ships reminds us of Cleopatra's inconsistency، بعدم ثباتها، and of the inconsistency of a human character in the play، وحتى بعدم ثبات الشخصيات في المسرحية. One cannot be sure of Cleopatra's alliance. لا يمكن لأحد التنبؤ بولاء كليوباترا. It is uncertain. وغير محتم هذا الأمر. Whether she flees out of fear، هل هي فرت بداعي الخوف، or because she realized it would be politically savvy to align herself with Caesar، ولا من وجهة نظر سياسية هو شيء مشان تحفظ نفسها بالانحياز للقيصر أو للسيزر. Now we reach to the end of the file. I have many questions to you now. Is Shakespeare against feminism? Who can answer me? Is Shakespeare with feminism or against feminism? Who can guess?
Against.
In this play, you can say he is against feminism. Why, Mudar? Why is Shakespeare against feminism? Or why can we explain that Shakespeare against feminism?
Because he is with the Oriental
view.
Oriental.
Or for
Yes.
Orientalism view. Okay. Can we say that Shakespeare is depicting the inferior state of women in order to make the society looks to the state of women at that time? Can we say that? In another word, at that time, he wants to depict the woman as somebody or as a person who is controlling by emotion in order to shed the light on the nature or the state of woman. Can we say that? Unfortunately, I think that Shakespeare at that time was biased, كان متحيزا. He was biased to the West. Number 2, why does Shakespeare follow the Roman style in tragedies? What is the Roman style in tragedies, guys? The Roman style of tragedies is that the play ends with the death of the main character. Am I right? So why does he follow the Roman style? Because they want to revive the classical literature. The third question, does Shakespeare expresses his ideas freely, or he is expressing the state point of view, the state of point of view? The state's point of view يعني وجهة نظر الدولة. I think for me, Shakespeare was expressing the state's point of view. The question number 4, what is the level of study that we did not mention and why? شو المستوى اللي ما درسنا أو ما ذكرناه من خلال هذا الملف فيما يخص المسرحية؟ طبعا هذا السؤال أكيد ما راح تسمعوا تجاوبوا عليه إلى الآن. طبعا أنا بجاوب بشكل مسبق، أنتم ما تسمعوا تجاوبوا حتى يتم قراءة النص. Now I think today it's enough. Try to read the text in advance, inshallah. In the future, inshallah, or the next week, we will start with the text. Okay, so please read in advance, prepare yourself, and ask your colleague that from now on we will take the attendance. Okay, راح ناخذ الحضور، راح يصير في عنا علامات على الحضور. Okay. Okay. See you later, inshallah. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.